Good morning, y'all. Hope you're doing good today. So I'm trying to get over my cold once again. A little bit of a chest cold, but I'm getting there. I got my coffee this morning, and I'm trying is the the important word here, to drink more water than I am anything caffeinated. But and I'm also starting my day with some eggs, some protein. So I just encourage you, like I've said before, this was a long time in one of my old videos, if you're trying to make a shift, a transition to a healthier lifestyle, you don't have to just go, I was going to say go cold turkey. I don't know if that's the right time to use that phrase, but you don't have to just make a drastic shift all at once. You don't have to do the whole black and white thinking kind of thing, right? It can be gradual. It can be a process. And so to highlight that, I will say as an example, I don't deny myself my caffeinated coffee. It really does help me get through the day, helps get me going. But I do try to incorporate plenty of just plain water, and also, you know, a little bit of healthy foods here and there, right? Protein and all this. And I think just being mindful even of the types of foods you eat, what makes you feel better, what makes you feel worse, not eating too much, because I feel awful if I eat too much. I do indulge from time to time, but and so I think that the reason a lot of diets fail is because they are so complicated. And I think that that's a great representation of the issue we have in life. I truly think we just overcomplicate things unnecessarily. Hang on, y'all. Check my teeth. I just ate. But the thing is, I've shared this with y'all before too. I've shared it a lot with y'all. But my parents were raised by their grandparents. And so, and I was raised by them, obviously. So their approach to life, their perspective, the lens they use, that colors everything that they experience and interpret, is kind of set back, you know, in older times, right? And so that has affected me. And if I had to just sum it up, I would say that I personally perceive this modern world as being unnecessarily complicated, even though a lot of what is a part of it is supposedly in place and meant to serve as things that are meant to make life simpler for us. And yet, from my perspective, they do the exact opposite. Just as an example, I mean, I'm in the parking lot right now, drinking my coffee, talking to you all, and I'm in a shopping complex, and you know, a lot of places won't even take cash anymore, but if you go into one of these places, and they have, you know, a power outage, or even if it's not a power outage, a lot of times they'll just have issues with their computers and their credit card processing machines and all this stuff, and it causes problems. Now back, you know, 20 years ago, when I was starting out working in little retail shops and everything, we would have these little machines where you would take somebody's credit card and kind of like run it over and make an imprint on this paper, and then you would process the payment, you know, later after they left. It would be like an in good faith kind of thing. Can you imagine? Like nowadays, it's like that would be inconceivable, because somebody could just have a card that, you know, is not only declined, but maybe even canceled, or something they dug out of a trash can, and you're just imprinting it and moving on. I mean, so, but our process of shopping now, if their systems are down, it's like total chaos. It's kind of like everything comes to a halt. And so, but yet if you have cash everything can keep flowing. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very old school. And that's just one tiny example. There's people who feel that running your dishes through a dishwasher is going to get you a better result in the end. And I understand the super high temperature water can serve to sanitize. I get that part, but hand washing is, for me, a way that you make really sure that, you know, every piece of silverware and everything has gotten literally cleaned by your hands. And you can use, you know, antibacterial dish soap. So I could go on and on and on and on. But those kind of things, that kind of a mindset, that resonates with me. And yet, what's the difference here? The difference is work and effort versus convenience. But yet, when you step back and you look at it, is it really all that convenient? Again, because it's like fragile. I see all of this, I don't know what would you call it, infrastructure? The way that we have built our modern society just feels like you could just take a pin, like a balloon, and just pop it, or, you know, shatter it all to pieces. It seems very vulnerable and fragile. And so that's how I see, you know, the workings of everything. And that's why, you know, you have to, it's real easy to look back on old processes with manufacturing and with cars and with, you know, trains and all this different stuff, and point out all the faults and the issues with it, and, you know, pollution. Now I could go on and on, right? But just to go into, again, black and white thinking, because if you understand these kind of processes in psychology, such as black and white thinking, on the micro scale, like within personal relationships, then you can apply that at large to the macro, to our society, and start to see the error of our ways. Because we, as a whole, as a society, do engage in black and white thinking, and we go from saying all this back here is all bad and all this up here is all good, and we suffer for it. Now, I think that there are some things, obviously, that really just are bad. They're just all bad, and they're not worth anything, and it was just a complete, you know, disaster. My dad told me a story one time, and I haven't researched this, but if you have interest, you know, obviously you can, but supposedly, way back in the day, I don't know if this was in the, you know, early 1900s or whatever, the story goes that people would go to, you know, shopping centers to get their shoes, and the new technology was like an x-ray machine, and they would x-ray their feet in the shoe or whatever to make sure it fit just right. Okay, so I found an article on this, and I'll drop the link down in the description for you all, but apparently it was in the 20s, just upon scanning the article, but they discontinued it because obviously people are just getting x-rayed constantly and without any fear of repeated exposure, you know, to radiation. But you know, that's just it. Sometimes I know there's other instances in history where, you know, there were just really bad decisions made. There's the obvious that we can think of, all of us, off the top of our head, which doesn't even need to be mentioned because we know that was just, there were, you know, really bad things. But there are a lot of really poor inventions that were brought to market really fast. And then, you know, it wasn't until people suffered really bad, sometimes life-altering, forever consequences that, you know, they were pulled from the market or whatever. And you think, oh, well, that's way in the past. Well, is it? I mean, look at all of the advertisements that you see, which I really never watch TV anymore. But I'm just thinking of how there's constant advertisements, even like when you're scrolling sometimes nowadays on social media. You know, it's everywhere on all the kinds of media, how these law firms are representing, large groups of people, masses of people who have been affected by, drugs that were approved and rushed to market and then retracted, and they're going to throw money at the problem that's supposed to solve it. Well, that doesn't solve it, Excuse me. So this is not meant to be a rant. This is just meant to highlight the fact that some things take time. Good things take time. I've got a sign like that in my kitchen. It says good things take time, and they do. Even your meals, you got your microwave meals, you've got your home cooked meals, and there's a huge difference. Not only in the way they taste, but in the health benefits to your body. And so I've always had an interest in researching just random stuff. If there's something that grabs my attention, I'm going to look into it. And I've always been this way. And so I've looked into how microwaves work, how they supposedly, this was many years ago, so I hope I'm remembering and recalling this right, but supposedly they scramble the molecules in your food, and that just kind of freaked me out because I'm thinking it still looks like, a hamburger or whatever, but is it really? Because you just scramble the molecules. So what's that going to do to your body? We know that when you take in artificial additives in food, it's been said in studies before that your body doesn't always know what to do with things that are not natural. Our bodies are meant to work with nature and food that comes from nature. So when you put something in it that is completely lab made, and I know somebody could argue, well, everything that was used to create this substance is from nature, so it's still natural. I understand that, but the combination is not natural. We could sit here and nitpick and argue over details till the cows come home and then some. But the point is, our bodies, it's been proven that they literally don't know how to process certain artificial ingredients, and so they can literally it can have just a really bad effect. Let me just sum it up and say that. And you can always Google that and look into that too. This is something I researched in the past as well. But the old ways of whatever your own hands produced and cultivated and took care of and harvested and prepared and cooked and then you ingested, it's night and day difference. It is a black and white difference. Think about like my let me say this, my great grandparents used to have a small farm for their own family, and I remember as a little girl going to their house, and my great grandpa had already passed away. He passed away when I was super young, but my great grandmother, I remember going and her still cooking and having canned homemade sausage balls that came from their animals. And I can actually remember, this has got to be before I was even 6 or 7. It was when I was really young, 4 or 5 maybe. The taste of that meat, if you compared that with any meat you can get in the grocery store nowadays, it's like not even the same thing. And I remember that. It was so fresh, and I can't even explain it. It was just, and the closest experience that I've had to that in my adulthood was when I went to Italy. The food over there, the pasta over there, and everything over there, the pizza, we even went to a McDonald's over there. Everything over there tasted so different, and I felt, the result was that I felt so much healthier, better. It was like a fog lifted. It was like clarity, not just in your sight, but within your whole body, not like the veil lifting per se so much, but like just clarity of the toxins having been, had time to flush out of your body. I'm always paying attention. If somebody's circling around my car or something like that, staring at me, that was kind of weird. I don't think we realize how gummed up, how muddied our bodies really are in terms of overload, toxic overload. I don't think we realize that. But, when you start to wake up to toxicity in just relational aspects of life, okay, character and spirituality, all the things that are discussed in the Bible, Jesus directing, to look at the fruits, and to just use discernment and be careful with who you associate with. When you start to be very discerning in that way in your life, it's natural to want to be discerning in every aspect of your life. And so I just wanted to have just a very casual conversation with you all, discussion, and say, take time, maybe, if you have interest, to consider simplifying just the concept of just planting a seed in your heart of the concept of simplifying your life. Because if you do that, it's kind of like you're putting on that, I got my glasses here, that lens of simplicity. And then suddenly, you're not just so focused in on one tiny aspect of your life and overcomplicating that, and it's all you can handle, and you can barely handle it. Like following this crazy, just chaotic, very detailed diet to a T kind of thing, where it's just all consuming in your life. As an example, if you just simply use that mindset, look through this lens of simplicity, then what I have found is you are naturally going to view everything in your life in that manner, and you're naturally going to be able to see, just as you live your life and as things come up, you're going to see the difference in what isn't simple about the situation, how it could be simple, maybe an alternative to the situation, or in other words, it just makes things clear for you. It clears the fog, the mud, the mist. It clears it for you. Just the simple lens of simplicity. And so that's kind of in alignment with how I see just one aspect of many, really, but maybe an overarching aspect of how I see Jesus talking about, I came not to bring peace but a sword. In other words, if you're going to cut, what are you doing? You are dividing. You are getting rid of, if you're cooking, you're cutting the fat, right? You're getting rid of the part that is toxic to the rest. It's the same thing also in the Bible when it's said, it's better, if your right hand offends you, it's better to cut that off as opposed to the whole body being destroyed, right? It's all metaphorical, obviously. We're not talking about literally doing that. Black and white thinking on the large scale omits the details. It omits the gray area. Ironically, I'm wearing gray today. But it omits the details, and therefore the context and all this other stuff, and all that matters. What I'm talking about doing is the fine work, the detailed work. It takes effort within your own life, and that takes looking at the details and cutting at that level, doing away with this, keeping this, trying this over here, picking this. It's a very detailed process. But what it ultimately means is, if you want to just use a visualization, right, to just have another way to look at this, a metaphor, it's sort of like what a lot of us find I can speak for myself. I imagine a lot of other people would agree who have gone through this. What you find when you go through this process is that instead of it being like that kind of a process, it's more of like a excavation type process. Like I'm thinking of like an archaeological dig, and I'm thinking about the brushes where they find something and they sweep all the dust away, the dirt and the debris, and they're left with the fossilized, the bones, you know, the fossils, whatever, the buried treasure, whatever it is. It's kind of like that is what is true, but it's underneath all of these layers and layers of dirt. And so as you go through the process, you're going to find that, and then you realize the layers that have been added in our life, just under the guise, the cloak, the disguise basically of convenience and fun, or just the way everybody does things and what's acceptable, and you realize that it's all, you might call all these things traps, because they steal your time and your effort and your just day-to-day life, and they don't produce any fruit. In fact, they wear you down, they tire you out, they're unnecessary, they're sometimes detrimental to your health. And I'm generalizing here, but this can be applied to a lot of different ways, different aspects of our life, ways we live our life, things in our life, and all this. But that's the process, and you can't, unfortunately, I don't think, get to the core of things without doing this work, unfortunately. I think you can get a glimpse of it when you travel to another land, another place, and you see their way of life, and you have comparison. Context is a great teacher, a wonderful teacher. Comparison and experience and all this. But in order to really implement, this kind of thing into your own life, it really does take effort. And so that's why I've always been drawn to how, in the past, within, all different cultures, these different tribes, they've respected their elders, and the elders have passed down the really important information to the young people of the tribe, so that they didn't have to suffer consequences within their own life so much, and I feel like that's kind of been lost in modern society. And I think it's still there. I don't think it's completely lost, but I think that you have to really want it, and you have to really look for it. And in doing so, as we all are growing together in this garden of life, as we grow, some of us seek this out. Some of us seek out the advice of elders and the old ways that were good. They weren't all good, but some were. And then others never get to that point. Others never do see the error in any of their ways. And one might call that or blame that on ego. Through the religious lens, it would be sin, continuing to live in sin. Remember that another aspect of the word sin is without, so that would be without guidance, without the guidance of God and elders, right? So living without that. And I think all of us start off that way if we're not blessed enough to be brought up in a family or a tribe that, has that a part of their functioning. The elders just automatically advise the young. If you're not brought up that way, then you have to seek it out. And at some point, a lot of us do. Many of us do. But unfortunately, I think many don't. And I think through the spiritual lens, that is the dividing of the wheat and the tares. Just naturally. That is the sword that divides. Just naturally. As we are all growing together. Remember, in the Bible it says, let them grow together. You know, the tares and the wheat. And don't divide until the harvest. So, something to think about. Try on that lens of simplicity. I bet it will bring you more peace in your life. And freedom, just a sense of freedom that you can do things your own way. I'm sure that there are people who, if they were privy to see how I live my life and different aspects of my life and things, they would judge me for a lot of different ways I live and things I have and all this. Because there's people who always judge. It's just the way it is, right? But I know who I am. And I am a work in progress. And none of us are perfect. But I am finding, even though I was brought up already being taught, you know, certain old ways of living, I'm still finding my own way to simplify things as I go. And I do that more and more and more. And it brings me just a lot of freedom. I feel like if I can approach how I do certain things in my life then a different way than, you know, what the masses do, what's shown on TV and in the movies and all this. It's like kind of like thinking outside the box. It's kind of like just doing things your own way, but in a way that you have cultivated, almost like you're creating your own masterpiece within your life, in all these ways that you live your life and all these things that you do, just in the way you do things. And so it's very fulfilling. It's very fulfilling. It's like you are your own inventor and creator in your own life, and not only is it a blessing in your own life, but to be able to get to a place where you can then share that, you know, with others who may want and need that for their own life, to be inspired. You know, then you become an elder. You know, it's just kind of a beautiful thing. But I could go on, and I know this was very vague and generalized, but I hope it was enjoyable to listen to. I hope it got the wheels turning for you. And I just encourage you, if you have interest, to look into the lens of simplicity. So thanks so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I will see you again very soon.